It's back. Don't go away. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And yes, indeed, it is back. Mega. I gotta tell you, I love bringing these to you. The mega builds are projects that I just cannot see myself trying to squish into a 15 or 20-minute video. So, you know, I don't purposefully make them extra long, but I don't want to cheat you out of whatever goes on there, and there's usually quite a bit there. So, you know, it's important to me to make sure that you get to see everything. And in fact, if you are a content creator, there's a lot of conversation out there about how long videos should be, and some say they should be short, some they say they should be long. The best answer I found was that they should be as long as they need to be. And so mega builds need to be longer. I don't fill them full of a bunch of superfluous stuff just to try to make them longer, but I also try not to cut out things that you might enjoy. Anyhow, this is just making it longer needlessly, so let's shut my mouth and get to work. In 1980, Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor teamed up to create perhaps their greatest buddy movie of all time, and certainly my favorite, Stir Crazy. Directed by Sidney Poitier, Stir Crazy chronicles Skip and Harry's turn for the worse as they are wrongly convicted of bank robbery and are sent to the penitentiary. In the movie, Skip and Harry use an iconic Dodge A108 van to travel across the country before being arrested. And today, I'll be taking two M2 Dodge A100 vans to make this very special vehicle from a very special film. Fortunately for me, the A100s and vehicles like it changed very little over the years, and the 108 is really just a stretched 100. So I'll be doing my best Jim Silva impression, and I will be combining these two vans into one longer vehicle. A while back, we did a 3 blind mice build with an M2 van, and I forgot how frustrating it can be to take these darn things apart. I have 2 of these nightmares to disassemble. They trick you into thinking it's going to be easy by using a screw to attach the base to the body, but let me tell you, it's all downhill after that. Most of the detailed parts have melted tabs that you have to cut off to remove them. The glass was the real issue. I finally got it out, but it sure put up a fight. With both vans apart, it is time for the warm liquid goo phase. Today, you'll be getting a special double dip as I simultaneously drop both bodies into the goo. This is gonna be so satisfying. The next day, both bodies come out of the goo clean as a whistle and just need a trip to the sink for washing. I'll follow that up with a light scrub with the brass bristle brush to remove any last vestiges of paint and perhaps just a bit out of habit. What time is it? It is silver time. Time to cut these suckers apart. I'm going to start by taping off a cut line for me to follow. Getting these cuts straight and in the right place is going to be crucial to this build. By laying the tape down, I should be able to follow it along as a guide, and I'll be using my jeweler's saw as it makes a very small kerf and is easy to control. To make the 108, I need one extra window. So, the cuts on the two bodies will be in two different places. One on one side of a window and the other on the other side of the window. This way, when I put the two parts together, the van will be one window longer. If you're lamenting the waste of the other van, don't. It's going to go together nicely and make for a fun shorty van project, but that's for another day. With both vans apart, I'll clean up the cut edge a bit, and to my happiness, a test fit shows the parts are going to line up perfectly. Like a glove? Yeah, these fit together beautifully. Right here is where I know this project is going to work. I clamp the ends together so I can focus on the alignment, and continuing with my best Silva impression, I bust out the JB Weld. I really haven't used JB Weld much in the past, and when I have, I hadn't been really that impressed. But today is going to change all of that. I mix up equal parts of the JB, and from the inside of the van, I start to press it down on the cut line with a little force to get a small amount to squeeze through the cut. This worked great. No fighting with the alignment and no excessive globs of adhesive to deal with. I then just smeared a fairly thin layer of JB Weld on the inside surfaces and left this to dry for 24 hours. After drying, I was super pleased to see the parts firmly held together. The trick with the JB Weld, I guess, is giving it enough time to cure properly, because this worked great and it was nice and strong. Because I was careful and judicious with the JB Weld, the cleanup was minimal. With a small file, I cleaned up around the window frames and along the seam. After the cleanup, I filled the gaps with a little AK Interactive plastic putty. This stuff is fabulous. It's super easy to work with. I totally love it. This plastic putty by Vallejo is some great stuff. It is my go-to filler. It goes on very easily. It's got a lot of precise control. It's easy to shape. It's easy to sand. It does a great job. It doesn't shrink. It doesn't crack. It's just fabulous stuff, and I highly, highly recommend it. After the first round of filling came sanding and priming. This process took several rounds to make sure that the seam disappeared. The extra window section I used was actually a part of a door, and I needed to get rid of the door, so I had to fill in all of those seams too. The sanding, filling, and priming, it really was a bit repetitive, but in the end, it worked great, and the van looked like it was made this way. I really was starting to get very excited about the project at this point. After my final priming, I went ahead and set the van aside to dry thoroughly and turned my attention to the computer. The Stir Crazy van had a roof window vent that this one doesn't have. I used the free online app Tinkercad to make a vent window 3D model. I then exported it so I could prepare it for printing in the Anycubic slicing software. I scaled the model, I set supports, and then I exported it to my printer and hit go. The Anycubic Photon 3D resin printer is an amazing tool. I print so many little parts and pieces with this thing, and they always come out amazing. Anyhow, once this part is done printing, I can go ahead and take it off the build plate and cure it under some UV light. With the body dry and the 3D printer, well, 3D printing, I can actually go ahead and start working on body details like rust. From online images, I mapped out the rust, and then I took a grinding head in my rotary tool and started to rough up those areas on the van. This gives your rust effect a great realistic look. Once done, I'll reprime the van and I'll put it aside again to dry. I need to make some ugly curtains for the van. So, after checking out more online images, I designed some in Adobe Illustrator, and then I print them out on laser decal paper. I'm going to apply the decals to some foil so I can fold and crinkle the curtains, giving them some realistic looks. I make more than I think I need for some insurance, and then I put these aside for the time being. I took one of the two bases and cut it in half so that I could start to figure out the gap. I placed both ends in the body, and then I busted out a ruler. With that gap in mind, I made a part from sheet plastic to fill the gap, and one that would have some tabs on it to glue it to each end of the base. Once made, I used a little bit more JB Weld to glue it all together, clamped it up, and set it aside to dry. With my roof window finally cured, I go ahead and cut off the supports, clean it up a little bit, and then with a drop of thick CA glue, I attach it to the roof. Once it's dry, I can move to the paint booth. The van gets a final coat of primer, and once that's dry, I paint a rust color over most of the van, again keeping it splotchy and only going full color in the worst rust spots. That is followed up with second darker rust color that is only put in random areas. This will offer up some variety in the rust color. After that's dry, I went ahead and sprayed everything with some chipping fluid and then set it aside to dry. Skip and Harry's van is a very faded, ugly green. So I took a little Tamiya cockpit green and I lightened it up ever so slightly with a little bit of flat white paint and got a really nice, ugly green color. Now what I'm doing is I lay this down. It goes against all the principles of painting these cars because sloppy and splotchy is the key here. So if you have a thin spot or another spot that's a little too heavy or whatever, it really doesn't matter. You want it to look old and dirty and thin and faded. So splotchy really is better. So that's really doing a great job for me, and it's going to look so much better after I start to remove a little bit of it, thanks to the chipping fluid that I put down earlier. Okay, so the van also has a faded, splotchy, ugly white stripe right down the middle. And I gotta tell you, I was a little worried at this point because so far I was really happy with the way everything was going, but I wasn't sure how the tape and the paint and the chipping fluid would all work together. And I didn't want the paint to just be peeling off of here. But I really didn't have a choice, so I went ahead and masked this off using a little bit of Tamiya tape, and I'll go back to the paint booth when I'm done to paint the white. So now I'm painting the white stripe, and I'm just using a little bit of Tamiya XF2 flat white. Thinned it down really good, and again, splotchy, uneven, light is the key here. I want it to look like it's wearing away off the surface of the van. So, you know, this is a great place to practice your skills on airbrushing because you really don't have to get a home run here. Messy is great. Because I am worried about how the tape and the paint and the chipping fluid will all interact, I am peeling the tape off immediately. I'm not even waiting to clean the airbrush. It shouldn't be any problem because this paint is a flat paint. It's a very, very light coat, and it's already dry. Now, I'm certainly not going to shove a finger in it to prove it to you, but it's dry enough to take this tape off. And in the end, it does come off. The paint doesn't peel away, so home run. So I have both sides of the base, and I have the plastic extension that I made, so now I can glue them all together. Once again, I'm going to be using JB Weld. I mix it up, spread a little on, clamp everything together, and set it aside to dry. Once cured, that JB Weld is as strong as hell. And here is the base. The JB Weld is dry, and I painted it with some flat black Tamiya paint, and it came out perfect. I do a few test fits and make some minor adjustments, but other than that, this thing is ready to go. The van in the movie is missing a window, and it's patched with a piece of wood. I used a small square of wood veneer that had a very, very tight grain, cut it to size, and superglued it to the inside of the body. The tight grain helped keep it in scale. There's no doubt that this little detail is my favorite part of the entire build. It's time to make the rust happen. So, with a stiff brush and some water, I start to rub away the paint, and thanks to the chipping fluid, the rust slowly begins to emerge. This works great, and when mixed with the splotchy flat paint, it really looks amazing. Word of warning, don't overdo this. Be sure to be very random and don't overdo it, and that will give you your best, most realistic look. Just a side note, when doing a rust effect or something like this on a 1/64 scale vehicle, you've got to have a really light touch because it will be so easy to just blow right past what looks realistic. With a Japanese saw, I cut the interior in half. Once in two, I can do some test fitting and make some adjustments to account for the JB weld inside the body. The interior has a good color and you won't see much of it at all with the curtains. So the only interior part I'm going to paint is the dashboard, which I paint with some Tamiya XF1 flat black. The glass was a pain in the butt coming out and again going back in. I had to cut away a part for the missing window and I had to remove most of the center to accommodate for the JB weld on the roof. This made the part very fragile, it was difficult to get to fit right, just a giant pain in the keister. But I did manage to get it in. This was one of the rare builds you'll see me not use gauzy. In fact, I didn't clean the windows at all because I seriously doubt Skip and Harry were cleaning these windows on a regular basis. With the glass back in, I can now turn my attention to the curtains. I cut them out, wrinkle them, and then I just need to glue them in place. The foil worked out great, but next time I might choose heavy duty foil to give it a little bit more support. I cut and measured these, and then I glued them in place using Elmer's white glue, so that if I got glue on the windows, it really wouldn't matter because it dries clear. I did indeed get glue on the windows, and indeed, the glue dried clear, and it all worked out in the end. After everything was dry, I was able to reach up in there with a pair of tweezers and arrange and mess up the curtains to my liking. Yeah, so anyhow, the dashboard really is the only part that's going to get any paint of the interior, and it's just going to get a solid uh, XF1 flat black Tamiya paint job. There really isn't a lot of reason to paint much of the other parts of the interior. I torched the grille and bumper for the damage to the front of the van, and I bent the pieces into the right positions, but they were left with a sort of melted look, so I hit them with a file to take that melty look away. After that, a little bit of paint and some rust, and they ended up looking great. I then just glued these back onto the body using some thick cyanoacrylate. I have three kinds of CA glue in my arsenal. I have the thin stuff, medium, and then the thick. I'm using the thick here. It takes a little bit longer to dry, but you have a lot more control of it. I've had some bad experiences in my submarine model, for example, with the thin stuff just running all over and making a giant mess. So yeah, it's really nice to have all three of these glues in your arsenal, and don't forget some activator to speed things up when you need it. I glued the original exhaust back to the base using some CA and gave it a heavy dose of rust color using AK Interactive's oil brushers. While I have the oil brushers out, I can use them to do some detailing with rust streaks and rain streaks, some dark staining around the gas cap. Really great stuff. All you have to do to use them is apply a small dot with the tip of the brush and let it set up. Later, come back with a soft brush dampened with some turpenoid and use that to soften and streak the paint. It's a very, very effective weathering technique. I really do love the oil brushers. I think they work great. And really, in a pinch, if you screw up and don't like the effect, it's pretty easy to get the stuff off and you can start all over again. But in this case, it's going to give me some really nice rust streaks and those little kind of white traily streaks that you get from like water running down the side of a vehicle. And yes, kind of little white traily streaks is technical jargon. And don't you forget it. I can finally drop the interior back in and button the thing up with the base and the original screw. I painted the front wheels flat black and the back ones flat white. I also flipped the back tires around so that only the front has the white walls. We are in the home stretch of Mega Build 3. I'll hit up the handles and lights with some Tamiya Chrome Silver, and then the tail lights will get a dot of transparent red, and the front markers will get some transparent orange. A decal on the front for the Dodge logo, and 2 license plate decals. I can finally put Mega Build 3 in the books. I'm super excited about how this came out, and I hope you love it as much as I do. So with no more ado, here is Skippin' Harry's van from the movie Stir Crazy. There you have it, Skippin' Harry's A108 van that they used in the movie Stir Crazy. I had so much fun with this build, almost as much fun and enjoyment as I get out of watching the movie. It's a movie I literally could watch every day. It was a great project. I had a lot of fun, and in my opinion, I think it came out amazing. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and click subscribe. Click the little bell to be notified anytime I release a new video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I read everything. All right, this is Paul from Fat Guy Productions. I'm going to get out of here. Until next time, I hope you have an amazing, happy day where things don't go awry and you can just live life happy in your woodpecker suit and everything goes okay for you. Until next time, this is Paul saying be good.